So I'm calling this week's sessions Church Part 2 because we're continuing looking at the book of Ephesus. And last week we saw how in the first part of the book, Paul talks about what God's plan is for the world and then the part that the church plays in that. But then at the end of last week, we sort of started to look at the second part of the book where he's talking about, now what does this mean to live the Christian life? So today we're going to begin in the middle of chapter 4. And Paul says Christians have to live a life that is different, is unique in the world around them. Now this difference, he says, begins in the mind. We have to think differently from the way the rest of the world thinks. He points out that those who do not belong to Christ are darkened in their understanding and ignorant of God, insensitive to him, and this leads to lives that are full of impurity and greed. When we come to Jesus, we need to learn to think his way, to follow his truth. Romans 12:2, Paul says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." And then here in Ephesians chapter 4, he's saying, "Put off the old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your mind, to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and in holiness." In other words, to live as Christians means to think differently from the rest of the world. Now this transformation takes place in two ways. It's our own effort, but it's also the work of the Holy Spirit. Now we have to make the effort to be disciplined, to just watch the way we think about things, but also we need to have the discipline that when the Holy Spirit says, that's not godly, that's not good, that we're willing to say, oh, okay, I confess that, and I will change and ask the Holy Spirit to change whatever it is that we are thinking wrongly. It's an ongoing process, of course, and it goes on for the rest of our lives. And it's that idea of being changed bit by bit into the likeness of Christ. Now, Paul gives some examples of what he's meaning here. The first thing is he says, stop telling falsehoods. One of the 10 commandments is, you shall not give false witness against your neighbour. And false witness, of course, is lying. If it's against another person, then it has a purpose behind it. It's either we want some win over them, we want to get something for ourselves. And in fact, any lying has the same motive itself. Either we're lying to get out of getting into trouble, or we're lying to sort of make ourselves look good in someone else's eyes, or we want to get something that we don't rightfully have the right to, so we tell lies. Whatever it is, the motive is selfishness. And Paul says to us, speak truthfully to one another, because we are all part of the one body. And selfishness is what causes divisions. The second thing he moves on to is anger. Now, anger is an emotion, and an emotion is not wrong. But what we do with that emotion can be damaging. The truth is, there are times when we will feel angry. So what do we do with it? And Paul says, deal with it quickly. Don't let it settle in our heart where it starts to cause trouble. Dealing with it usually has to start with forgiveness. If I'm angry at someone, I need to forgive them. If I'm angry at a situation, I may need to forgive the people who caused that situation, or even forgive the government or whoever it is. But that's usually the place we have to start, to deal with that anger. That smouldering anger will lead to resentment and bitterness, and neither of those are very attractive parts of a personality. The third advice is stop stealing. Sounds a bit odd to be saying to Christians, stop stealing, but stealing isn't necessarily just taking someone else's goods or money. Stealing is when we are using perhaps a position of trust to gain our own ends, because we are actually taking something which is not ours to have. So being honest and with other people, just sort of caring about other people. Again, the selfishness motive comes in there. In fact, Paul says, if you are stealing, stop it, start working. Why? Well, it's not just for your character. He says, start working so that you may be able to give to others who are in need. So there is a purpose for other people rather than a selfish motive behind what he says.